Alright, so this is next lesson. I think it's lesson 9, but the lesson number doesn't matter. It's really the second part of significant figures. And this is probably the part that's the most important when it comes to labs. Because I'm sure there have been many times when you have been doing a calculation. For example, if you wanted to calculate density, and you may divide two numbers, right? Density is mass divided by volume. And you come out with this number that has like 10 numbers after the decimal, and you say to yourself, well, how do I round that off? Well, this section is going to show you how to do it. Sometimes on the Regents exam, they say to round off using the correct number of significant figures. Sometimes they don't say anything at all. If they don't say anything at all, it doesn't matter what you put. You can put the entire number that's on the calculator. If they tell you that you have to round it off based on significant figures, this is the section that you need. And here's the problem. There's actually two separate rules. There's one rule for when you're multiplying and dividing numbers and how you round off, and there's a completely different and unrelated rule when you are adding and subtracting. So let's do the multiplication one first. If you take a look at the multiplication one, here's what we're doing. We're taking 12.257 times 1.162. Now, that's the number that you get when you here's the number that you get. Let me draw. Here's the number that you get when you put it in the calculator, 14.242634. Do I need to put down all of those numbers? Well, here's the rule when you're multiplying and dividing. The rule is based on how many significant figures you have in the numbers that you're multiplying. So for example, if I look at this number, that has 5 significant figures. And this number has, of course, 4 significant figures. So in this particular case, I want to round off to 4 because we're supposed to round off when you're multiplying and dividing by the fewest numbers of significant figures. That means that my final answer can only have 4 significant figures. I have to round off here. So my answer would be 14.24. Now, one thing you have to be careful of is if this number was 5 or higher, that would make this go up by 1. I'm sure you all know that already. Now, when you're adding and subtracting, it's a completely different rule. It has nothing really to do with significant figures. It has to do with how many numbers that you have to the right of the decimal. So when I add these 3 numbers, this is what I get on the calculator. But where do I round off to? Well, if I look at the numbers, notice that I have 2 numbers to the right of the decimal. I have 3 numbers to the right of the decimal. And here's 1 number. So I want to round off to the least numbers to the right of the decimal, which means I have to round it off to 1 decimal place. So I would be 220.4 would be the answer to this one. Okay, so it's important to remember that you have to round off based on the 2 different rules, one for multiplication and division and one for adding and subtracting. So let's take a look at the 2 examples here. If you look at this, we're subtracting, so it's the fewest numbers to the right of the decimal. So I'm going to use my little calculator here, and I'm taking 5.1456, and I'm subtracting 2.31. What I get is, this is what I get when I subtract. 2.8, this is not coming out right. I get 2.8356, and then 2 zeros. Now, it's the fewest numbers to the right of the decimal, so there's 4 numbers to the right of the decimal. Here I only have 2 numbers to the right of the decimal, so I have to round it off here. Now, see, this is a 5 here. That makes this number go up 1, so my answer here would be 2.84. If you put 2.83, it would be marked incorrect. Now I'm dividing, so let me go through and do this again. I have 69.25 divided by 45.8, and what I get is 1.51222009, and it's the fewest number of significant figures. That has 4 significant. This has 3, so my final answer can only have 3 significant figures. So to be 1.51 would be the answer. And that's how you do calculations while keeping track of the significant figures. All right. Now, this is something that I'm not really going to even worry about. when they don't ask you anything about scientific notation except to convert from one to the other. They're never going to ask you to subtract, multiply, divide, or add numbers in scientific notation. So I'm going to completely ignore this section, which I'm sure you are very upset about. And that's really it for the kind of the introduction and the math part of chemistry. And we're going to get into actual chemistry stuff in the next unit, next lesson.